It's Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, with Getting Goosebumps, and we are up to episode number 14 of season 1. It came from beneath the sink. Famously, the one about a killer sponge. I know it's not a sponge per se, but look, this is what this is. This episode just reminds me of a very old Family Guy joke where they did a cutaway in a very early season of Stephen King meeting his author, and basically, have you got any new ideas for Steve? And Stephen King can make horror out of anything. And he's like, oh, I've got this killer lamp. Rah, rah, rah. And his agent just goes, when can I have it? And this is what this felt like. It's just like, okay, this is a story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit surprising that in the first season, this was one of the ones they decided to adapt, because it does feel like a bit of a bottom of the barrel idea. Like, he was scrambling for ideas, and he's like, I don't know, a killer sponge. And that's like, even though they said technically it isn't that really. I mean, that is clearly where the idea came from. And I don't know if there's like a story behind it. Maybe R.L. Stan, when he was younger, maybe he was like scared of some kind of sponge, and that maybe the idea stemmed from that. Honestly, don't know where a lot of the ideas from these stories come from. It'd be quite interesting to know, actually.
Yeah, particularly when you get into the detail of what this sponge actually is, and it doesn't really. This isn't a great episode, in my opinion.
No, it's definitely, if we were rating the goofy episodes, I think this would be quite high on the list.
Fair enough. Right, let's get into it then. It's directed by David Winning, and we begin, and it's a Goosebumps series trope. We begin with an idyllic house, soft, chilled music, and a family about to move in. Good God, did I really notice in these final episodes of season 1 how many times we begin with families moving into a new house.
It's always that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the daughter of the family, Kat, played by Catherine Isabel. And I was like, oh shit, that's Catherine Isabel. Amazing. She's been in so many movies. If you don't know who she is, she's Ginger from Ginger Snaps.
I haven't seen Ginger Snaps, but I know it's mentioned amongst the horror community.
Yeah, her filmography is quite long. She's in a ton of horror as well. So it's quite like, well, that's so cool. But she's complaining about moving. Give it a chance, says the dad, and it's kind of like, yeah, we've been here before. The kids don't want to move to the new house, and the parents are like, no, it'll be fine, and we all know it won't be. A young boy named Carlo, played by Ashley Brown, cycles up, and the family seem to know him already, which confused me because he says something about, oh, it only took me 10 minutes to ride here. I was like, oh, okay, so they lived like 15 minutes down the road or something, and then moved.
Yeah, they must have just moved locally.
Yeah. They have a dog called Killer. Sorry,
I was gonna say, I wonder why, because the daughter obviously didn't enjoy the fact that they moved, but they moved so locally. Why does it really matter?
Yeah, you're right. Normally there's a reason. Like, normally they say the reason, oh, we're scientists and we got to do work. Oh, because of this reason, that reason. There's no real reason for them moving here, ever explained.
That's true. Also, you just mentioned the name of the dog, and I've written down that I thought Killer was quite an interesting name for a family dog. Just, I wonder how the parents agreed to name the dog that.
Yeah, I thought that as well. And it's like Killer. I was like, Killer? Okay, yeah. All right then, fair enough. Yeah, so Killer, and they go in, and Kat does a voiceover about being unhappy about moving to a new house. The dog runs off. She follows him, and he's acting strange around a kitchen cupboard, so we're getting there already. She then puts him outside and goes to check the cupboard. It's dark inside, and she sees a pair of red eyes at the back and thinks it's a cat.
Glowing red eyes, man. Gotta be a cat.
Oh, my first was like, oh, it's a critter. It's a critter. That's what critter in there. They've got red eyes.
Yeah, that's interesting you had that line of thought, because I was thinking critter a lot of this episode. It really reminded me, just the way it acts, and a lot of the sounds it makes are quite critter-esque, I thought.
What isn't helping is the fact that over the last couple of weeks, I've been rewatching, as of the time recording, all the Critters movies for an in-depth on the channel. So Critters are kind of stuck in my head. And it was the first sort of time Lou's ever seen, my wife's ever seen any of the Critters movies. So I had that really horrible thing where I'm like, oh, these movies are great. And then rewatching them and going, oh shit, they're not. And she's looking at me going,
great, man.
She's looking at me going, they're all right. And I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. I mean, the first one and the second one are fine, but it is downhill from there.
The second one's just a great, like, 80s cheesy horror movie, man. The second one especially. But
It
anyway,
I don't dispute that at all. But yeah,
yeah.
anyway, it's not a critter in there. The dog is trying to warn her as she goes to get the cat out, and when it doesn't come out, she gets a torch and unveils a toothy sponge. That's what this thing looks like.
Mm,
An old sponge, a used sponge, but
mm.
it's got like a little row of teeth as it sort of opens its mouth.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come here. There.
I thought the effects
all
were,
right.
yeah. When it's up close and the teeth are moving and there's some kind of like, there's some kind of effect there. I don't know how to describe what the effect is, but it looks decent. I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I had no complaints about it either.
You wouldn't want to put your
She's
hand towards that sponge, so
Yeah.
it kind of achieves that. Yeah.
Yeah. She screams and no one actually comes. I was like, okay, that's good parenting. She screams and no one thinks I better go check on her.
That's Goosebumps, man. Terrible parenting. Just that. Yeah.
It's funny, we don't actually get a you should go see a therapist in this episode for once.
Mm.
When she checks again, the sponge just looks like a sponge now. So she picks it up, but it moves in her hand and she screams again. And this time her family comes. Obviously, when they look at it, it's just a sponge. And her brother, Daniel, played by Tyrone Savage, does what all younger brothers do, rips it out of her, obviously.
Mm.
The
That
dog,
sibling rivalry again.
it's every episode. I don't think
Every episode.
we're going to get to one later in this season where we have siblings, and it was such a breath of fresh air to see them get along in a later episode. And we'll get to that one. The dog causes some plates to be smashed, upsetting the mum, who's played by Amanda Tapping. She gets really sad about it. She's like, "My mother gave me them." So okay, people give heirlooms and all that, but like, if they're that important, like, they should be wrapped up and not in the kitchen. Like, does that mean you use them?
Just stop trying to be a character, mom. No one cares about you.
Yeah, stop being a character. Yeah. The dog is taken away by the kids. The dad, who's played by Howard Hoover, takes the sponge and throws it in the bin, where we see it start to like pulsate and glow inside the bin. That night, we see the sponge escaping and moving around our house. It opens a door.
A very mischievous sponge.
Kat is in the bathroom washing her face, and as she reaches for a towel, the sponge is there and she grabs it. So naturally, she freaks out. There's a whole sort of flurry of events here. She freaks out, smashes a glass. Her brother comes running in, steps in the broken glass, which is then followed by the mother, who hears the noise, and obviously she's not happy. It's a flurry of events.
Mm.
And as a mum, she's even less happy when Kat basically blames it on a sponge. And it's like, God damn these Goosebump kids.
I know. I mean, what are they going to come up with next?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time is when we see this, where like, we say kids, but they're teenagers, and they should be more like clued up than this.
Yeah, they should know that they're not going to believe you. Like, prove it in some way, or just don't bother, kind of thing.
Yeah. Even later that night, Kat's asleep and Killer's in her room. He hears some noises under her bed, so the dog goes under the bed and comes face to face with the sponge. And we don't see Killer for quite a while now, which puzzled me quite a bit, because it was like, oh, the episode will pretend like he was killed, but apparently he may just run off.
Yeah, maybe it was because, I imagine these episodes, they don't have a lot of time to film them, and maybe the dog just wasn't being a very good actor, and they just decided to get him out of the episode, maybe.
Yeah, very much possible. Yeah. The next morning, we get some banter between the mother and the boy, which is basically don't eat pizza for breakfast. It sounds like such a petty thing, but when you're watching these episodes and they're short and there's not a lot of detail, you end up picking up on small things.
Mm-hmm.
He comes down for breakfast, down the stairs, eating the pizza. Where did he get it from?
Well, he obviously stole it the night before. I don't have no idea.
Because like you'd think like if he got it from the kitchen, she was already in the kitchen, she'd have noticed it and all that. But he comes down eating pizza, and all I was thinking was like, he eat like pizza from the day before that's been sitting on his bedroom floor. Tramp.
Yeah.
Followed by Kat. She's wondering where Killer is and she's worried, so she goes on a bike ride to try and find him. As she rides around, she starts to note all the things that have gone wrong already and wonders what might happen next. This voiceover part is like, oh, we're having bad luck and all that. And she starts to list some of the bad luck things. You know, when he kind of just like, a couple of broken plates really isn't that big of a deal. Maybe,
Yeah, nothing. See if like the dog had been murdered or something, or had died. That'd be quite dramatic. But like I'm saying,
know that yet.
Yeah, like especially in this scene, which you're gonna mention. I'll let you mention what happens before I say what I'm gonna say.
Well, yeah, she immediately finds out what will go wrong as she goes down a hill and finds her brakes aren't working. She panics, hits a tree, and gets knocked off her bike.
What's next? My brakes!
This is what I was gonna mention. I think like that really made me think of Critters a lot, was because a lot of the stuff that's happening is it seems like the sponge is having a lot of fun basically and being really like mischievous. And I just found that idea of this sponge cutting the brakes of her bike, I found that like really hilarious.
Same here. I had this image of it getting in the night and just gnawing on her brakes and like that little noise it makes,
Yeah, like the sponge, it's doing like silly little things, but maybe it's just having fun, Maybe it's like a gremlin or something.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's fine, but now convinced that something strange is going on. Back home, she talks to Daniel and Carlo about the weird events, Killer's gone missing, and the sponge. They laugh at Kat until they notice something weird about her helmet. And I like this. She takes her helmet off, and she's got a helmet off, and they realize the sponge is inside their helmet. And it's like, wait, was it in there all along and she didn't notice?
Yeah. But you definitely would notice, surely.
Yeah, like it was on top of her head. But the sponge also reveals itself to the other kids as well, being a bit growly and stuff like that.
Get away from me! See, what did I tell you, huh?
Kat captures it with some iron tongs and takes it outside to a very conveniently dug hole. Like there's already a dug hole in the garden,
That's true.
She dumps it in and they bury it. She then delivers a horrible line, say goodnight, Spongy. Like, oh.
Yeah. I'll probably sounded better in the book, maybe.
Yeah. I don't even remember. It's just a point. Do you remember if you ever read the story?
No, I have no idea. What do you think? This maybe even is not a book?
It is a book because I remember the cover. It was a purple one, but I don't remember the book. I don't remember ever reading it, but I remember it is a book. As she walks back inside, she says out loud that she thinks the luck is about to change. And that night, Kat is sitting sadly on the steps of a house, squeezing Killer's toy. Her dad comes out along, they talk and then go inside. I didn't mind this scene. I thought she did quite good acting here to kind of look a bit downbeat about Killer not coming back. We then see the dirt the sponge is buried in begin to shift. The next morning, the kids go out to the back garden to find all the plants are dying. And they realize it must be related to the sponge, so decide to take it to their science teacher at school. I like that wrinkle. The idea of burying it in the ground causes decay, basically.
I like that, yeah.
What happened? Everything's dying.
Mrs. Vanderhoff, played by Pamela Redfern, sees it as nothing but a sponge, but Kat is able to convince her to look into it further. She asks her to do an autopsy or whatever, not an autopsy, to cut it open, basically.
Dissect it.
Dissect it, that's right. And it seems like Mrs. Vanderhoff agrees. It's like, even if like you were just humoring them, them, it's still just a sponge as far as you're concerned.
But it does also raise the question of if she really wanted to dispose of this sponge. She's had her hands on it plenty of times. She hasn't like really made much of an effort to attempt to destroy it in any way. You'd think that'd be something they'd go through, and it feels like a bit of a plot hole for her to not have attempted it, or they tried to bury it. But it's a sponge, right? So why haven't you tried to like cut it up or simply set it on fire, for example?
You are right. And it's weird because after these set of scenes, they will try to tie that plot hole up, but it's almost too late because we've already done several things where you could argue she should have at least attempted these things.
Yeah, especially when especially when the sponge has been like inanimate and not shown itself to other people. That would have been a good opportunity to maybe threaten the sponge with destruction, and then maybe it would have shown its true self.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. She does tell Mrs. Vanderhoff to put it back in its cage, but she doesn't, and it comes to life. And apparently, I had to rewatch the scene twice because I felt like I missed something. It shatters a vial on her desk. Now, I initially, while watching and doing notes, thought I missed what was very critter-like, it shooting a spike or something out of its body to shatter it. So I was like, did I miss that? Let me go back. Rewatched it, and all I can work out is it's got force powers because it seems to do it with its mind.
All right.
I couldn't see anything.
Cool. Yeah. No idea. Maybe it spat out one of its teeth or something. I have no idea.
I watched it twice, didn't see anything fly across, because you think like if they were doing that, they would focus on that element, but it doesn't. It just sort of pulsates and then the vial explodes on a desk over there.
I think that's probably supposed to be somewhat the point. They're not supposed to know what this sponge is capable of. It can do all these crazy things like make plant life like decay, you know. What is it kind of thing? We
are at this now going to get a load of information because at the house they conveniently the kids have found all the information they need in a book, some book called Tales of the Weird or something like that. It's not a sponge, it's something called a gruel. And it causes bad luck. If the owner should get rid of it, they will die. That's what we find out here. Kat presumes
random stuff.
It is, right? Because Kat also presumes because she found it in the cupboard, she's the owner. And I was kind of like, that doesn't make any sense. That surely the owner would be the person that first picked it up or bought it.
Yeah, like if it's something like in Ring, then you have to accept it from somebody type of thing. You can't just find it on the floor and be like, oh, you know, that's not you owning it. Yeah,
because in theory, if the previous owner of the house who had the sponge, had the gruel, left the house and left it there, then they're dead, right? Because they threw it away.
Yeah. Then it's ownerless, then, isn't it?
Exactly.
So it can never get a new owner. That's like a bit of a plot hole.
It is. But also, like I said, getting this information now after a day or two of detail and dealings with said monster. Yes, it's a messy one.
Yeah.
Well, Kat realizes she has to get it back from Mrs. Vanderhoff. And then we get a brief moment where they find another bit of detail in the book about what basically accounts to a vampiric potato. And I was like, well, that will definitely not come back later on, will it? That will definitely not come up later on.
No chance.
They sneak into the school as the janitor, played by Jack Newman, is doing his round, listening to music on his headphones. He fails to notice a slime trail that leads to his car, and he ends up going into the lab, and the kids are forced to hide. He begins to clean, but we can see he's using the sponge, the gruel, as the cleaning item. The lights go out, and he goes to check the fuses, but ends up knocking himself out. I did love that apparently the fuses for the school aren't kept in like a basement or a janitor's closet or anything like that. They're in this exact room.
Totally.
But yeah, he knocks himself out by banging his head on the cupboard, and the gruel is on the move. The kids check on him and confirm he's still alive, but then he heard the gruel. Kat goes to investigate and climbs up like a ladder thing to a top shelf. and is startled by the gruel. And on the way, basically, when she's up there, she notes, again, it's another really weird thing. She notes a massive jar of acid on the top shelf. And I was just like, this is a school. That shit's just there.
There's a lot of negligence going on in Goosebumps.
She ends up falling off and knocking the acid off as well. She's okay, but the kids see the gruel is beginning to increase in size. The dialogue in this section is so bad, and the effects of the thing growing bigger is even worse. This is not good TV.
No.
Oh no! Look at this mess. It's going everywhere. The door's blocked. We're trapped. And that thing, the gruel, it's growing. What are we gonna do? We'll have to go out the window.
They go to escape out the window, but decide they can't leave the janitor, which is nice of them. As they try to get him up, his music starts to play and the gruel begins to shrink. And they think it doesn't like music. And it's just another, what was R.L. Stine on when he wrote this story?
He was on something, for sure.
Well, what they actually realize is the music is very upbeat and peppy, and it's a happy song. So it's the happiness in the music that's hurting it. So Daniel goes to turn it up, but somehow stops it from working instead. So now the gruel begins to grow big once again. And then we get the singing. So they decide to sing a song, and she decides to compliment it, which begins to work. But now the chemicals caused by the spilled acid starts to choke the kids. So stops them from singing, and the gruel begins to grow again.
Will it ever end?
Did I ever tell you what a wonderful sponge you are? Right, Jordan, keep going. So handsome. So terrific. Of course. Brilliant. Kill it with kindness. I love your big, beautiful eyes. All of them.
The janitor, though, is awake, and he uses the fire extinguisher on the gruel, and it seems to freeze it solid. I didn't really know what was going on here. I was like, oh, has he killed it? And it was only after the fact that I realized, okay, I don't know if you've ever used a fire extinguisher and all that. You know, it's not freaking, what do you call it? It's not mass. It's not likely to freeze, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sometime later, we see that Kat has worked out how to keep the gruel in check. She has it in her room, surrounded like in a box with nice and happy things, and plays it music all the time through headphones. She does it for us. She puts the headphones on, it says good morning to the gruel, and presses play. And did you recognize the song that's playing?
It was just the Goosebumps theme, wasn't it?
It's the remix of the Goosebumps theme that we first heard in Night of the Living Dummy 2.
Good morning, Gruely. Another beautiful day. There you go. Enjoy your music.
When he was showing
reusing that.
Yeah, do you remember when he's showing his weird video for the family game night?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember our family game night. How could I forget, man? Great time.
Yeah, how could you forget that? I actually really like this. I thought this was a funny little scene. Like, it's sort of sitting there, this little happy little thing. And made me go, that's cool.
Yeah, it's clearly supposed to have, you know, the tongue is supposed to be in your cheek for this whole episode, I think, for sure. It's clearly designed that way. And I don't know, man, I kind of felt a little bit bad for the sponge in the end. You know, it's kind of being tortured almost. Being kept a prisoner for who knows the rest of the time.
Yeah, you're basically right. And here's the thing, you can't be mad at the sponge. It's just doing what's in its nature.
Exactly. You know, that's like any creature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be considered cruelty if it was any other living creature. So
Agreed.
Justice for Sponge.
Anyway, to show that the family's luck has changed, Killer now comes back and everyone is happy. The mum goes to make French toast, which apparently gets a right cheer in the kids. You know, French toast is all right.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah.
And Kat notices Killer has something in his mouth. She gets it from the dog and holds it in her hand. And guess what it is? It's a vampiric potato.
A potato?
The potato.
Yeah, she sort of holds it and it opens wide, its big mouth with like sharp teeth and all that, and that's how the episode ends. Yeah.
I think that what happened is they were making the episode and they were like, oh, we got our conclusion. You know, the sponge is being kept prisoner with the music and stuff like that. And then someone was like, hang on, director, you had the whole story about the potato the boy told. You got to do something with that. Otherwise, it's completely pointless. Why do we even do that scene? And he's like, I'll just chuck it in at the end there. Just maybe we'll do a sequel down the line. But I don't think this one ever actually gets a sequel.
I don't believe it does either. This is not one I'm aware of. This is just a standalone story and not a great one at that. It's a right mixed bag. I mean, it's imaginative. I'll give credit where it's due. It's imaginative in regards to taking an inanimate object and turning it into something, well, scary. We use the term scary loosely because, of course, this is scares for children.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing, like I said, about the tongue being in cheek thing, I thought it felt like it was intentionally a homage to cheap and cheesy like monster movies, because I noticed some small details on the episode that were clearly put in there on purpose. But the boy in it, he mentions X-Files at one point, which that was quite known for having some cheesy monster effects, and also at one point in the episode, the two boys, you can see they're watching like some cheap cheesy monster movie on TV. So I think it's intentionally paying like homage to that type of thing. So if you look at it from that perspective, it makes it a bit better, I think, almost.
You're right. You know what? That's not something I really picked up upon. But even as you're saying, and you're making those reference points, and I'm thinking back to the sort of stuff I saw, you're right. That does make it better. None of the episodes in Goosebumps are to be taken too seriously. We've said that a lot throughout this run so far. But this is a good example of where if you take it seriously, you're just going to have a miserable time. I didn't enjoy it because I think what we've watched already and what will follow is superior. And in a ranking, I put this one quite low. But, it's not actively terrible. It's 25 minutes of silliness.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain episodes that might be made better with better concepts and whatnot and better acting. But this one, I think, is far less forgettable than some of those may be, because just a bit sheer ridiculousness, you won't forget the killer sponge.
That is true. But if you've got some thoughts, let us know about it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?